Ernest Hemingway's Soldier's Home has long been read as a story about post-traumatic stress and the difficulty soldiers face when returning to civilian life after war. The protagonist, Harold Krebs, returns to his Oklahoma hometown in the summer of 1919, long after the initial excitement of welcoming soldiers home has faded. He struggles to communicate his war experiences, falls into an aimless routine, and eventually decides to leave for Kansas City after a painful confrontation with his mother. On the surface, this appears to be a straightforward narrative of a traumatized veteran unable to adjust to peacetime. However, a close examination of a crucial passage reveals something more complex and disturbing about Krebs' detachment. While Soldier's Home is often viewed as a story about post-war trauma and a soldier's difficulty adjusting to civilian life, Hemingway's focus on Krebs' self-imposed alienation reveals that modern society itself is built on falseness, requiring people to perform emotions and tell comforting lies rather than confront reality. A passage that clearly illuminates Krebs' deliberate withdrawal from civilian society occurs when Hemingway describes Krebs' philosophy about relationships and desire. After watching the town's young women from his front porch, Krebs reflects, he did not want any consequences. He did not want any consequences ever again. He wanted to live along without consequences. This repetition of consequences 3 times embodies Krebs' worldview. Beyond stylistic emphasis, this authorial choice reveals a fundamental principle that explains his post-war existence. Krebs does not simply want to avoid romantic entanglements, as he instead wants to exist outside the entire system of cause and effect that structures human relationships and social life. In this passage, Hemingway shifts from this declaration into an analysis of masculine performance and social expectations. Krebs continues, besides, he did not really need a girl. The army had taught him that. It was alright to pose as though you had to have a girl. Nearly everybody did that, but it wasn't true. Here, Hemingway introduces the language of theater and performance that will dominate the rest of the passage. The word pose signals that Krebs now views civilian life as a series of artificial performances, required roles that people adopt, regardless of their authenticity. The army, an institution of violence and survival, has taught him to see through the performances that peacetime society demands. The passage then presents 2 opposing performances of masculinity in parallel structure. First, a fellow boasted how girls meant nothing to him, that he never thought of them, that they could not touch him. Then, a fellow boasted that he could not get along without girls, that he had to have them all the time, that he could not go to sleep without them. Hemingway's use of the words a fellow rather than you or he creates distance from these performances, as Krebs makes general observations about masculine behavior without fully engaging in it himself. Both extremes, total indifference and desperate need, are presented as equally false boasts, not authentic experiences. Krebs' experience in war has given him the clarity to recognize that, quote, that was all a lie. It was all a lie both ways, unquote. The declarative simplicity of this statement, along with its use of repetition, demonstrates the stark, black and white thinking that now characterizes Krebs' worldview. There's truth and there's performance, and there's nothing in between. This passage must be understood in the context of Krebs' earlier experiences of lying about the war. When he first returned home, quote, his town had heard too many atrocity stories to be thrilled by actualities. Krebs found that to be listened to at all, he had to lie, unquote. The act of lying by performing an acceptable version of his war experience to civilian audiences had a devastating effect. Quote, a distaste for everything that had happened to him in the war set in because of the lies he had told. All of the times that had been able to make him feel cool and clear inside himself when he thought of them, now lost their cool, valuable quality, and then were lost themselves, unquote. His authentic war memories, which provided moral clarity and purpose, were corrupted and destroyed by his need to perform a satisfactory version of them. Having experienced how performance corrupts authentic experience, Krebs now recognizes the same dynamic in all civilian social rituals. The passage about consequences reveals that Krebs' alienation is not something that has happened to him, but something he has chosen. His alienation is strategic, deliberate, and self-protective. The final assertion of the passage makes this clear, quote, you did not need a girl unless you thought about them, unquote. This shift to the universal you suggests Krebs believes he has discovered a universal truth about human desire and need. By controlling his thoughts and refusing to participate mentally and emotionally in the world around him, he can avoid consequences, which refers to the emotional investment, vulnerability, and necessity of performing roles he now recognizes as false. Earlier in the story, Hemingway describes how Krebs watches the girls walking past his house, noting that, quote, he liked the pattern, unquote. This aesthetic appreciation, viewing the girls as a pattern rather than as potential romantic partners, exemplifies his behavior of observation without participation. He can look without wanting, needing, or engaging. The Army has taught him to separate visual appreciation from emotional or physical desire, allowing him to exist as a spectator to civilian life rather than a participant in it. However, Krebs' clarity about social performance isolates rather than frees him. He cannot participate in courtship rituals that he believes to be theater. He cannot tell comforting lies about the war when the truth has been corrupted by previous lies. He cannot perform the role of the ambitious young man his parents expect because he has lost the ability to perform any role at all. His emotional detachment, which he experiences as a preservation of the, quote, cool and clear, unquote, authenticity he felt during moments of moral certainty in war, comes across to others as apathy, coldness, or dysfunction. He tells his mother, quote, I don't love anybody, unquote, trying not to be cruel, but refusing to perform the expected emotion. Her devastation at this statement reveals how much civilian society depends on performed rather than authentic feeling. This passage about Krebs' individual psychology has significant implications within Hemingway's broader critique of post-war American society. Krebs can only maintain his sense of authenticity by withdrawing completely from social participation, which raises questions about the society he has returned to. Hemingway implies that modern American life is structured entirely around performance, pose, and comfortable lives. The consequences that Krebs seeks to avoid are prevalent within the entire system of emotional performances and expectations that civilian society demands. While it may seem as though his war experience has damaged his ability to function in everyday life, it has also given him the clarity to see that normal society is itself built on inauthenticity. In Soldier's Home, Hemingway demonstrates that although war traumatizes soldiers, it reveals truth that makes peacetime life impossible to bear. Krebs' self-imposed alienation is evidence of his unwillingness to participate in the lies that structure everyday American life. By the end of the story, he will leave for Kansas City, but there is no suggestion that this move will resolve his fundamental incompatibility with civilian society. He has achieved a level of clarity that leaves him with only two options: isolation or the surrender of everything authentic within him. Through Krebs, Hemingway suggests that war experience causes survivors to recognize that the society they defended is built on falseness, which they can no longer participate in.